A big shout out and thank you to our featured sponsors. Get your home summer ready with Bleaches NC. Is your carpet looking tired or stubborn stains and odors lingering? Let Bleaches NC IICRC certified specialists use advanced technology to give your carpets and upholstery a fresh, sanitized look. Safe for your family and pets, they'll make your home feel like new. Mention the Nurtured Woman podcast for 15% off your first cleaning. Call 984-51-GRIME or 984-514-7463 today. Did you know that homes listed with the real estate agent sell faster and for more money than those sold by the owner? It's true. And when it comes to selling, no one works harder for you than Kristen Dorninger, a trusted real estate agent with Southern Homes of the Carolinas. She knows the Lake Norman market inside and out, and she's got the marketing, the strategy, and the negotiation skills to get your home sold for top dollar. If you're thinking of selling, don't just list it. Sell it smarter with Kristen. Call Kristen Dorninger today at 704-928-6573. Welcome to The Nurtured Woman, a podcast bringing you conversations from a wide range of guests, from medical and wellness practitioners to wine and culinary experts, fashion leaders, and other trusted field insiders. Join me, Michele Droll, your guide, as we delve into topics that inspire you. Have you ever wondered if there's more to dental health than just brushing, flossing, and filling cavities? What if your dentist could help you unravel deeper health issues? Chronic fatigue, inflammation, even ADHD symptoms in kids, just by looking at your mouth. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of holistic dentistry, where cutting-edge science meets a whole-body approach to health. My guest today is Dr. Erin Wilbanks, a respected holistic and biologic dentist who looks beyond the teeth to uncover the root causes of common health concerns. We'll explore how the microbiome in your mouth impacts your body, why airway health is crucial, especially for kids, and what you should know about common dental material like fluoride and mercury fillings. Welcome, Dr. Wilbanks.
Hi, thank you so much, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Wilbanks, what is holistic, or you had said biologic dentistry, and how does it differ from traditional dentistry?
Yeah, so it can mean a lot of different things to different practitioners. Every holistic or biologic dentist still practices in a little bit of a different way from one another. But for me, what drew me in initially was really focusing on the oral systemic connection. For so long, dentistry and medicine has been very separate from one another. It's like, the mouth is disconnected from everything else. And we know that's not true, and we have learned over the recent years just how important that connection of oral health is for full body health. I wanted to look bigger and deeper, and especially work with people if they do have issues with their oral health. What could be going on systemically that's contributing to that, and what in their mouth could be contributing to some of their systemic problems.
What does that mean, systemic problems?
Yeah, so even things like high blood pressure, people with gut issues, celiac, Crohn's. Yeah, there's so many different things now. Autoimmune issues are on the rise, and we want to make sure that what's going on in the mouth is not impacting that otherwise inflammation or anything else that could be going on, where we can help someone's health and not just their oral health. But I like to really focus too on root cause solution. So the best dentistry is no dentistry, and that's really what I want for my patients. I want to set them up with so much education from a prevention standpoint that they're just coming in for their regular checkups, but that they're healthy otherwise and not having chronic dental issues.
So talk to me more about some of these issues. Inflammation. How do you treat that?
Yeah, so it depends. Every single person has something different going on, has a different story. It's not black and white for most people. It's a journey to figure out solutions, but we're looking at the gums and the gum inflammation. That is huge. Gum disease and gum inflammation is linked to over 57 different systemic diseases.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Yeah, so increased risk for stroke, cardiovascular events, heart attack, congestive heart failure. Now we're even linking oral inflammation to certain cancers, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, issues with conceiving, pregnancy, fertility, even like sperm health in men. So there's so many different things. Diabetes, there's a huge relation there. Blood sugar balancing, insulin resistance, all of that.
Wow. So the mouth is like a mirror into the rest of the body.
It really is. And the mouth is really truly the gateway to the whole body. And it is, also the start of the gut too. It's we're essentially, as humans, sets of tubes, so that tube starts from the mouth and goes to the gut. So there is a lot of connection there. And so we're looking for inflammation, infection, even dysbiosis, oral dysbiosis.
What's that?
So think about, a lot of people are talking about gut health.
It's very trending.
Yes, it is. So, with gut health, we have a whole oral microbiome. That's like our gut microbiome too. And so if we have imbalances, like microbial imbalances, bacterial imbalances, we're going to have oral health issues. And that imbalance can also move to other places in the body because it's all connected. What's going on in the mouth can travel and move to other areas of the body too.
Dr. Wilbanks, you shared with us a number of different conditions that could impact us. How would you treat a person if someone comes to you with these issues? For instance, maybe they come to you to have their biannual teeth cleaning. Is this where it starts? And then what do you do?
Yeah. So for our patients, it starts with a 2-hour full new patient workup where we really do a deep dive, and we don't do a cleaning at that very first visit. And a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to come in and get my cleaning. It's like, no, we have a lot of things to dig into. It's a lot of information at that first visit. We want to know what's going on medically. We want to know what's going on in their mouth, if they're having any problems. But I'm doing a really deep assessment at the gums first. So looking for inflammation. We're looking at the teeth. So do we have fractures? Are we clenching our teeth? Are we grinding our teeth? Do we have cavities? Do we have old fillings that maybe aren't so good for us, full of mercury and could be contributing to some heavy metals in the body? Do we have infections? Infections in the mouth, that's also traveling through the bloodstream. We want to identify and eliminate any imbalances, so inflammation, cavities, infections, things like that. And so that looks like a different story for everyone, but we want to create ultimately homeostasis. We want any dentistry that we are doing as well to be biomimetic, meaning it is like what's already present in the mouth. We want it to mimic nature. So we want to be using biocompatible materials too, because we don't want to be introducing things that could be causing harm to the body.
What other symptoms might we notice in our mouth that could be indicative of health issues?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones for me is I can tell a lot about someone's sleep and breathing and airway health from looking at their mouth. A lot of people are really blown away by this. I'll just look in someone's mouth and start asking them questions about their sleep and breathing, and they're like, whoa, why are we talking about this? I can tell a lot and recommend further evaluations with their airway. Even though they may not think they have a problem, I'm seeing some of those problems manifest in their mouth that could be contributing to some sleep issues.
So I see that you focus on treating the whole person rather than just the teeth. Give me an example of how you approach the holistic treatment. So I'm coming from my first assessment and you indicate that I've got inflammation in my gums. Now what?
Yeah. So again, it can depend so much. Sometimes there are, someone needs a cleaning. We need to talk further about their oral hygiene routine at home. A lot of people brush twice a day, floss, blah, 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 but there's not really much details further than that. And every person is different. So we try to individualize the care that someone may need to be doing at home. So whether that's how they're holding the toothbrush, the type of toothbrush they're using, the type of toothpaste they're using, or rinse, tongue scraping, oil pulling, the way they're breathing, the oral hygiene of what's going on every single day at home is more important than really what we're doing in the office. So we want to make sure that patient has all the education, is equipped with all of the knowledge and the tools to be able to go home and maintain everything. So too, we're talking about diet because a lot of people these days are really focused on products. What product should I be using? What toothpaste? And those things are important, but diet is going to be the most important every time because what we're putting into our bodies is going to make the biggest impact. So we're even talking about diet and, the way we're breathing.
Tell me more about that. What kind of diet would you recommend for good health?
Every person's different on what is best for them, but the biggest things is going to be really trying to eliminate ultra processed and processed foods, eliminating or limiting processed foods and trying to focus on eating a rainbow, being very well rounded. A lot of things are convenience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of hidden sugars. There's a lot of fermentable carbohydrates. So think about the crackers, the goldfish, sticky granola bars, the fruit leathers. So A lot of people will say, hey, well, I don't really eat candy. Why would I be getting all these cavities? And so it's more than that. We're eating these processed things that are sticking in our teeth that could be leading to those cavities. A lot of us too are very mineral deficient. So our teeth really need essential minerals like calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, vitamin D,
Can we
vitamin
take
K.
supplements for that, or really that should come from the food?
Well, ideally you want to try to get as much as you can from your food. And so I try not to tell people what to supplement with because there's a saying it's test, not guess. So you don't really know what you're deficient in unless you're testing. So luckily there are some really great functional medicine providers that I can help people get to so that they can get their baseline levels to see if they might need to supplement with something.
So let's talk more about inflammation. I'm really fascinated by it. Inflammation is caused by bacteria, correct?
It can be. It
Okay.
can be, absolutely. Yeah.
What do we do if it's caused by bacteria and that's the reason for the inflammation? How do you know what kind of bacteria?
Yeah. So back in the day, some people were actually taking little swabs of plaque from people's mouths and putting it on a microscope and looking at what's there. Because again, like with this whole oral microbiome thing, like our gut, every single person's oral microbiome is different. And so we have the good bugs and we have the bad bugs. And if we create this environment where we let those bad bugs overgrow the good ones, then that's when we're going to have oral disease. So something newer that we've implemented into the office that's been really helpful is we're utilizing an oral microbiome testing kit. So basically taking a saliva sample, we send it to this company and they're sequencing someone's entire oral microbiome so we can see what's present. And this kind of stuff has been around for a while, but a lot of it was very limited where it was only testing for a few different species. But now we've evolved so much where we're testing for everything. So we can even see candida. So not just bacteria. It's cool because we can get someone's whole oral microbiome to know specifics. I'm the person where I'm like, information is key. The more information that you have about yourself, the more you can be equipped to do something about it. So with knowing how diverse someone's oral microbiome is and how many of the bad bacteria, how many of the good bacteria, we can create a specific plan for that person to target those bad bugs, bring those levels down. I like this kind of analysis of like organic gardening. Like we're weeding out the bad stuff. We're trying to feed and seed the good stuff. And so we're creating a better environment. That way, someone's oral health can regulate and take care of itself better.
If we have bad bacteria in our mouth, does that mean that same bacteria could be in our gut?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so it can lead to gut issues, because the mouth is the start of the gut. And think about it, we're always swallowing. We're constantly swallowing what's
And it
in
can
our
survive
mouth.
the
Yes.
gastric juices?
Yes, it can. It can.
So what happens if the bad bacteria then is found in the gut? And how do you know that?
I don't necessarily know. I believe in a very collaborative approach. So I'm always saying, hey, I need you to go see such and such over here because this is their specialty. So if someone is having some gut issues, I can work on them with their oral microbiome, but then send them to another provider that's more focused on getting their gut health situated.
So you're getting tipped off in the first assessment that there could be some issues that are going to need to be collaboratively treated.
Absolutely. And even so, the report that we get, it's broken down into sections. So we have our normal gingivitis or gum inflammation causing strains. Then we have a tooth decay section. We have a gut health section. So everything's broken up so we can see impacts and knowing what's there and say, hey, this gut health section, some of these microbes could be really affecting your gut health. Let's get you to this health provider to then work further on that. But from what we're seeing orally, here's what we can do to help from the start of the gut, which is the mouth.
Dr. Wilbanks, I want to circle back around to something you had said earlier about airway health and its role in dental and overall health. How do you evaluate a patient's airway? And then why is that important for their overall health?
Yeah, so I'll start with some basic questions when someone's coming in and just ask how their sleep is. And that can be a very subjective question because if someone slept horribly their entire life, they don't even know what good sleep is. Ask if there's any snoring history, mouth breathing history. Are they waking up in the morning with migraines? Did they wake up a lot to use the bathroom? And so we'll get a baseline just from their subjectivity. And then I'll look in the mouth. So clenching and grinding has a huge airway connection. So we
Really?
used to think that it was just stress, external stress. That can certainly make it worse, but that's all of it's related to the nervous system. So think about when we're stressed, we're in a fight or flight response. We're in that sympathetic response. So when we're asleep, if we are not breathing properly, our brain is saying, hey, this is dangerous. I'm not getting enough oxygen. And it will trigger your body to go in a fight or flight response. And in return, some people will clench their teeth and some people will grind their teeth. And when we do that, the studies show that we're opening up the airway. So it's a defense mechanism. So clenching and grinding is something I would definitely say, hey, we need to look into this further. Ability to breathe through the nose. So if someone is impaired nasal breathing, then they're not going to be breathing quality. There's a saying that we should be eating as often with our nose as we should be breathing with our mouths. Because we are never meant to be mouth breathing. Mouth breathing is common, but it's not normal.
What happens if we're mouth breathing, both children and adults? What are we coughing?
Yeah, so if the nose is clogged or even just habits, we can start mouth breathing. And we are supposed to be obligate nasal breathers. Like our bodies are designed to breathe through the nose. So when we breathe through the nose, we're filtering the air, we're taking out pollutants. We're warming the air to the proper temperature for our lungs, and we're producing something called nitric oxide. And that's our body's basically anti-inflammatory molecule. It helps with oxygenation and blood flow. So when we breathe through our mouth, we're going to be getting more pollutants. We're going to be causing a lot of inflammation in the throat. So that's why you'll see a lot of kids with tonsil issues. Their tonsils are getting big, their adenoids are
Get big
enlarged.
from that?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. It's going to bring our immune system down. So our immune system is going to be depleted.
Why does mouth breathing cause our immune system to be reduced?
So it's all about the pollutants and that immune response. So again, we're not filtering the air when we're breathing through our mouths. And it's also the nitric oxide relation. So the nitric oxide helps with our immune system. So if we're breathing through our mouths, we're not producing the nitric oxide. And so that's going to affect our immune system. And then it's not warming the air properly for the lungs. And so you can run into a lot of issues there.
Coming right back. Don't go away. Expert cleaning you can trust. Is your carpet looking tired? Stains that won't budge? Smell not so pleasant? We've got you covered. At Bleaches NC, our IICRC certified specialists use state-of-the-art cleaning technology to remove dirt, stains, smells, and allergens from your carpets and upholstery, leaving them fresh, sanitized, and looking their very best. We take pride in long-lasting results with a meticulous approach that's safe for your family and pets. Exclusive offer, mention the Nurtured Woman podcast and save 15% on your first cleaning. Call 984-51-GRIME or 984-514-7463 to book your appointment today. That's Bleaches NC. Did you know that homes listed with the real estate agent sell faster and for more money than those sold by the owner? It's true. And when it comes to selling, no one works harder for you than Kristen Dorninger, a trusted real estate agent with Southern Homes of the Carolinas. She knows the Lake Norman market inside and out, and she's got the marketing, the strategy, and the negotiation skills to get your home sold for top dollar. If you're thinking of selling, don't just list it. Sell it smarter with Kristen. Call Kristen Dorninger today at 704-928-6573. Welcome back to The Nurtured Woman. Now let's dive back into our conversation. So going back to something you had said earlier, if we are mouth breathing, we could put ourselves into the fight or flight mode. Did I say that correctly?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And does that impact stress hormones?
100%. So cortisol is a huge one. And that too can relate to blood pressure regulation. So cortisol can be increased significantly if we're mouth breathing or even if we have any type of sleep disorder breathing. So it can be even further than mouth breathing. It can be upper airway resistance or sleep apnea, snoring. It's going to affect those cortisol levels and hormone levels. And so you can be more prone to like stubborn weight gain, things like that. And blood pressure, like I said, a lot of people, my opinion is if someone is diagnosed with high blood pressure, they should have a sleep study and a sleep evaluation.
Okay.
I've seen people that once they've treated their sleep disordered breathing, were able to regulate their blood pressure better and actually get off of their blood pressure
Wow.
medication.
Wow. Impressive. So you evaluate a person airway, correct? Or do you send them out
Yeah,
somewhere?
so I can basically, I can't make the sleep diagnosis, but I can recognize the sign and symptoms, do get more information, and then also send that patient for a sleep study. So one thing that I utilize a lot, and I think it's just such an important tool, even past the airway, even just looking at the teeth and infections and inflammation, is something called a CBCT or a cone beam. So it's essentially a three-dimensional X-ray that spins around your head, and we can see structures that we would never be able to see otherwise. So I can see inside someone's nasal passages to see how big they are. Do we have a deviated septum or are turbinates enlarged that's making it harder to breathe through the nose? And then behind that, I can see the tonsils and adenoids. How big are they? Are they obstructing the airway? We can see the actual whole airway tube because, again, it's just a tube that air is flowing through. So we can see how big it is, how much volume is there, if it's restricted, where is it restricted? So it can help give us clues and tools of if there is a problem, where do we need to address it? What is the problem? So I recommend doing the cone beam combined with the sleep study too, because a cone beam, we're standing up straight in the static position, but it could be a completely different story whenever we're sleeping. We can be in a different position and still collapse the airway. So sleep study and the sleep physician is going to make that diagnosis. But once we have that information and those tools, we can create a game plan to get to the root cause of the problem.
So what should we look for in our children, in ourselves, and in our parents? What are the symptoms that we may not be breathing properly, particularly when we're sleeping?
Yeah, and it can vary definitely by age. Every age has different signs and symptoms. So first thing, when a child comes in, I'm immediately evaluating them from afar of if they have their lips wide open, if they have what we call open mouth posture. So having that chronic open mouth, that's okay. We're doing some mouth breathing. We have our mouth open. We might be having trouble breathing through the nose. I'm also looking under their eyes. You'll see these things, they're called allergic shiners. It's basically these dark circles under the eyes, and that's a sign of not enough proper oxygenation. I'm looking for signs like parents are saying, oh, we have a history of asthma issues. We have a history of chronic ear infections. We have a history of tonsillitis, inflamed tonsils, or we had to get our tonsils taken out. Even asking questions as far as, was your kid breastfed, bottle fed? If you struggle with breastfeeding, was there a problem latching? Because that can tell us if there's maybe a tongue tie that's contributing. And then in their mouth, I'm looking for ties. I'm looking if they have a tongue restriction or a lip restriction.
The pediatrician would have noticed that, right?
Unfortunately, no. They can recognize severe ones, but this is all cutting edge. So not a lot of people are really equipped to how to properly assess for ties. And really, until recent, we haven't even agreed on a system to how to actually diagnose a tie. So it can look completely different kid to kid. It's not always obvious. I'm also looking at their jaw development. So do we have really narrow jaws? Because we want nice wide jaws. I'm looking at their spacing between the teeth. So we want to see a lot of spacing to show that our jaws are wide enough. I'm also looking for wear on the teeth. So kids who have all these flattened teeth, they're grinding them. That's a sign that they're not breathing well enough. And I'm also asking, cavities, like we talked about, it can definitely, for kids especially, mouth breathing, in my opinion, besides diet, is the biggest reason why kids have cavities. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of those different things and then asking questions too about sleep.
Okay. And what about adults? Many of those same things, I guess, would be for us.
Yeah, a lot of times for adults, still the narrow jaws, the ties, adults saying that they have a lot of chronic neck tension, upper shoulder, upper back tension. I'm also looking in adults for something called acid pitting. Basically, there's this thing where we can have reflux at night. It's called silent reflux, so people don't even know that they have it. If we have an obstruction in our airway, it will cause a vacuum to where the stomach sphincter will open up and acid will come up and bathe the teeth. So there's very specific types of wear patterns that can be from that acid coming up. So that's something I'm looking for. Again, like we mentioned, the clenching, the grinding. TMJ pain is
Really?
huge for adults. Yeah,
Mm.
TMJ pain is a really big one. Or after dental work, they always really struggle with a lot of pain, bite issues, unexplained tooth pain too. People who are clenching at night because their airway is so disturbed, they'll come in and swear up and down that they have an abscess. They're like, my tooth is hurting so bad, I have an abscess. And I'm like, looking at it, there is nothing wrong. And it's literally from clenching from an airway issue.
How does the clenching relate to the airway issue? It seems like the mouth would be just totally open, not clenched with an airway issue.
Yeah, so we're not ever really in a static position. So if there is an obstructive sleep apnea, there's basically a period where you're breathing, you stop breathing, and then for however many seconds, and then you gasp for air again.
Mhm.
So we're not really staying in this one position. So a lot of people think that, well, if I'm mouth breathing, then my mouth's open, so I wouldn't be clenching and grinding, but it's typically patterns of closing and then opening. But yeah, again, so if there's like an obstruction, so if that airway is being collapsed, it triggers that fight or flight, the jaw will clench, and some people that jaw will grind to open everything up.
Okay. So, you had mentioned when we spoke several days ago that children who mouth breathe lead to adults with sleep apnea.
100%. The problem is that sleep disordered breathing is a progressive disease. So kids, again, this is all cutting edge, new information, new research, and we're learning more and more every day. So I see so many adults now. If we could only turn back the clock, like we could have easily fixed this. So if we used to say, oh, the kids will grow out of it. They'll grow out of it. But the truth is they never grow out of it. And it progressively gets worse unless we treat it.
So early intervention is critical.
Critical, yes. And ideally, because the jaw development plays such a huge role with our airway development. When we have wider jaws, we can breathe better. And the jaw is really done growing around age 12, once we hit kind of puberty ages. So we will treat kids like as early as age 3 to start getting on these things. Because that's where we're still mendable. We're still growing and we can affect that growth so that we can have really nice, big, open airways. I think sleep is also something more and more people are talking about, the importance of sleep hygiene, trying to get, nice, long quality sleep. And as kids, as they're developing, their little brains are still developing, their bodies are still developing. So we were talking about hormones earlier, and if that can affect things for kids, they're developing that growth hormone. And so we'll see growth hormone being affected. So kids with sleep issues typically are thinner versus adults can be more on the overweight side, not always. But also their bodies are developing with that growth hormone, but their brains are developing. So if we're not getting quality, restful, restorative, deep sleep, that's going to affect that brain health and that brain recovery. So sleep is so important for our brain health. So if all night long we're in a fight or flight, our bodies are working, we're not resting. And so the brain is just not recovering. It doesn't have that good quality oxygenation and recovery. And so that can cause fatigue and brain issues, lower IQ and ADHD symptoms. I see a lot all the time. Kids come in and they're just exhausted. And it doesn't matter how much sleep they're getting. They are just exhausted because they're not getting quality sleep.
So as a holistic dentist, when you are providing dental care, obviously the materials that you would use versus a regular dentist are going to be different. Talk to me about the materials you avoid and then what you use.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, the best dentistry is no dentistry, because truly there is no perfect material that we can use that doesn't have its shortcomings. A lot of people are asking now, because you can get so in the weeds about this stuff of even like, okay, I need a retainer and I don't want the metal one, but also the plastic one has the microplastics. And, what about this? And I just tell people, just do the best you can with this. So I try so hard to get my patients to be able to avoid having to have dentistry done, because again, there's no perfect materials, but a lot of materials back in the day, I would say the hottest topic material was always the amalgams or the mercury fillings. So these dental amalgams are about 50% mercury. And so for a long time, the American Dental Association would say, oh, you're not getting any of that mercury vapor exposure from them being in your mouth. But we knew that there was a lot of mercury exposure when they were going in and when they were coming out. But
How? Because it solidifies.
yeah, exactly. So, but anytime really there's any friction on the filling, you are getting some mercury vapor release. So the more friction, the more vapor. When it's going in first, it's very moldable. It hasn't set yet. So there's more, that mercury vapor is more dense going in. And then certainly when it's coming out, that high-speed dental drill, when it's touching it, there's a lot of mercury vapor exposure. But we then started showing studies where anytime there was any friction, you're chewing, your toothbrush is touching it, a little bit of mercury vapor is coming off. So then the American Dental Association was like, oh, okay, well, it's just not really enough to cause any harm. From a holistic and biologic perspective, in my opinion, there is no safe level of mercury exposure for someone, especially because we are just exposed to so many pollutants and heavy metals and things on a daily basis. So I'm the kind of person where I wanted what I can, control. I want to eliminate those sources if possible. So for the mercury fillings, we definitely don't use them anymore, but there are still some providers that do. There were still requirements in dental school that we had to place them, but it is banned in a lot of countries, but not the US for right now. So some people will come to me and they want their mercury fillings out, or say a tooth is broken and has a mercury filling in it and we need to take it out. We follow something called the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, to where it's a bunch of different barriers and suctions in place to prevent the patient as well as us, the provider, from getting all that mercury exposure. As far as replacing them go, sometimes we'll use something called a resin composite, which again is essentially like a plastic. So again, it's not perfect because it's still a type of plastic there. The good news is that, ours is BPA free. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And then sometimes we will use ceramics and dentistry, zirconia, lithium disilicate, so different types of ceramics that are pretty biocompatible. And if someone has a really high sensitivity, some people come in and have allergies to so many different things, we can do a blood test, send someone to a lab to have a blood test done, and it will basically take their blood and test it with it's a booklet full of dental materials to see what their blood is reactive and non-reactive with. So we can always do that if someone has those issues.
So you're saying you can safely remove the mercury fillings?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So the protocol is abbreviated SMART, and it's set by the IAOMT. And the IAOMT is the organization that basically created that protocol, as well as the accreditation program for biologic or holistic dentists. That's another thing, is it can be, saying you're biologic or holistic can be a marketing thing. And so it's like, I will hear stories of patients coming in and they're like, well, I went to such and such and I thought I was going to have my amalgam removed safely, but they didn't. And so we see that a lot, which is frustrating. So I will say, if you're considering having your amalgam taken out, please make sure that the provider is following that protocol. And in my opinion, if they're not, it's better to leave it in if you can.
Good advice. So I have to ask a controversial question. I know that many people regard this, you're on one side or you're on the other, but what's your perspective on fluoride use in toothpaste and then dental treatment?
Yeah, I hate that this has become so political lately, because it shouldn't be. So fluoride has been used in dentistry for a while. And in my opinion, there's a really big difference in topical fluoride. Okay, so that's like fluoride in toothpaste or rinse, versus systemic fluoride, which is the water fluoridation. So water fluoridation came around in the early 1900s, and a lot of people don't realize that the type of fluoride that goes in the water is a completely different type of fluoride that's in your toothpaste. So that water fluoridation, that fluoride's a fluorosilicate acid, so it's different than your sodium fluoride or your stannous fluoride that's going to be in your toothpaste. And it is actually waste from the fertilizer industry. Yeah.
My eyes are big.
Yeah. So we're like one of the only countries that does this. And so it was this experimental thing basically they did in the 1900s, because the decay rate was on the rise. And what do you know? That was also kind of when we started our agricultural revolution, and a lot more processed foods in our diet started really changing around that time. But basically, fluoride in the water used to be a much higher level than it is now. And they started seeing something called fluorosis. And it's basically high levels of fluoride can embed into the teeth and embed into the bones. And people were coming out with all these brown, chalky, white spots all over the teeth. So it was completely changing kind of the formulation of the teeth. And it can do that to the bones as well. So we have studies showing without a doubt that higher levels of fluoride systemically can lead to lower IQ levels in kids. So this is a really big thing right now, the neurodevelopment and the neurotoxicity that everyone is looking at. There was a 7-year-long trial in California that the verdict basically just came out last year. Someone was suing the EPA because they wanted them to relook at the safety measures of the water fluoridation. Because there's a study showing lower IQ levels. They tested fluoride in pregnant women's urine and then followed those women for another 3 years and then measured the IQ in their kids. And so those kids where the mothers had higher fluoride levels in their urine did have lower IQ levels. So we have lowered our level of fluoride in the water in recent years. So it used to be up to 2.2 milligrams a liter. Now the max limit is 0.7. So it's gone down a lot.
Safer? Can you use that word? Safer?
Yes, it's definitely safer because it is the dose makes the poison always. But the problem is you're not regulating how much of this water someone's drinking. So, you have an infant who is getting formula fed and is getting all of this water with all this fluoride in their tiny little bodies versus if a human adult who's 300 pounds is drinking that much fluoride, it's not going to affect them as much. And there's no way to regulate that. So fluoride is not an essential nutrient in the body. And we know that there are harmful effects and we're also exposed to it in so many different ways. So whenever it was introduced into the water, fluoride toothpaste wasn't even really a thing at the time. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people were drinking it in the water. We're putting in our toothpaste, our rinses. It's naturally occurring in some teas. So we're drinking black tea and green tea. We're getting it there. Processed foods, you're making your pasta, you have fluoride water that's going in your pasta.
You have filters on our refrigerators. Does that remove it?
It does not. No, it doesn't. So it's very accumulative. So we're getting it from so many different places.
In our water source.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the only way, again, there's no systemic benefit. It doesn't benefit anything else in the body. It only makes the teeth more acid resistant. Mm-hmm. So our pH can drop down further in our mouth and our teeth not break down. So it basically changes the whole chemical structure of the teeth. So it only works on the teeth topically. So that's a whole nother thing. It only works when it's touching the teeth. There is no systemic benefit. So if we drink a bunch of fluoride water and it's in our body, that fluoride's not then moving to the teeth to help it more acid resistant. So even in school, they taught us that water fluoridation only works for the second when you're sipping it, when it's touching the teeth before you swallow it, that's when it's working.
All right.
So it's in my opinion, I think everyone should be able to have a choice of if they want to use fluoride or not. And again, with no systemic benefit, it's if someone wants to use a fluoride toothpaste to protect themselves in that way, that's fine. But they get to have that choice versus putting it into the water or mass medicating people without their consent.
You had mentioned also that fluoride could cause iodine deficiencies.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Fluoride has a very high affinity to things. So that's why, it's embedding into the teeth. It's very competitive. So the same thing with our thyroid. So if we're ingesting fluoride and we have that available, if you have your thyroid enzyme, you have iodine in the environment, and then you have fluoride in the environment, that fluoride is going to beat out that iodine every single time. So it's affecting a lot of our enzymes like that. So it can be competing for other essential nutrients. So it can affect a lot of other systems in the body.
It's hard enough to get iodine in our system.
Yeah.
Without having it threatened by something else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So especially if someone says they have a history of thyroid issues, I'm like, hey, it's, and that's the thing. It's tough to filter out of your water. You have to your average filters don't filter it out. So you have to then okay, I'm going to install a reverse osmosis system in my house, or I'm going to get a specific fluoride filter. So it's tough. And I do think that there are a lot of, I don't think federally it will be banned. I don't know, but there are certain local areas and even states ever since that I talked about that trial, that 7-year-long trial in California, they ruled in favor of the people against the EPA. So the federal government basically said, the federal judge said, you, EPA, have to reconsider. These new studies are showing that this could potentially not be safe. And so the EPA has to figure out what they're going to do. They did appeal, so they're going to be fighting them again. But because of that lawsuit and how it was ruled, like Utah just completely took fluoride out of the entire state in the water. So it'll be really interesting to see. And again, there's been so much new research out lately. There was this whole meta-analysis study, this review where they looked at everything that was there, and they ruled that for water fluoridation, the amount of decay it reduced, the amount of cavities it reduced, average today, 0.25 cavities per person.
Wow.
So I would rather be able to make sure if there is a potential risk for your body, it's like, let's
For that benefit, for that little benefit.
For 0.25 less of a cavity per person. It just doesn't make sense right now. So,
Well, this was so eye-opening. Great conversation, and really incredible to think about how much our oral health connects to the rest of our body and then the steps we can take to really optimize it. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilbanks.
oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We hope you've enjoyed today's show and found our conversation with Dr. Erin Wilbanks informative and helpful. It's fascinating to learn how much our oral health can affect the rest of our body, from blood pressure and gut health to sleep quality and beyond. If you're thinking differently about your dental care, you're not alone. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye for now. Want to get your business in front of an engaged audience? Podcast ads boost brand awareness by 28%. That means more people remembering you. The Nurtured Woman podcast is the perfect place to share your message. We'll craft a custom ad and feature it in the middle of the show. Don't miss this chance to connect with our listeners in a meaningful way. Let's get your business heard. Reach out today to Michele Droll at mdroll@lknconnect.com. A big thank you to our featured sponsor, Bleaches NC, your expert carpet and upholstery cleaning service. From stubborn stains to odors, they tackle it all with safe, effective solutions. Don't forget, mention the Nurtured Woman podcast for 15% off your first cleaning. Call 984-51-GRIME today. Another thank you to Kristen Dorninger. Buying a home is a huge decision, and Kristen is the realtor you want by your side. Professional, trustworthy, and genuinely invested in finding the right home for you. Kristen handled all the details and made the process seamless for my family.